In a world of ice and snow, an unlikely friendship begins. Ready for an adventure, little buddy?
You bet! Let's go explore!
Together, they set off on a journey full of wonder.
In the heart of the world's coldest continent, where endless white ice stretches beyond the horizon and the wind sings through towering glaciers like an ancient song, there lived a small, chubby penguin named Piko. He had a soft black back that shimmered like polished stone, a pure white belly brighter than fresh snow, tiny orange feet that left delicate prints across the ice, and a fluffy feathered tuft that danced on top of his head whenever the wind blew. But what made Piko truly different were his bright blue eyes filled not just with curiosity, but with dreams. While the other penguins in his colony were content sliding across the ice, diving into freezing waters, and living the same peaceful routine day after day, Piko would often climb the highest icy cliffs at sunrise and stare far beyond the ocean horizon. As golden light painted the snow in shades of pink and orange, he would whisper to himself, "There has to be more than this. I want to see the world." Every night, beneath glowing green and purple auroras dancing across the Antarctic sky, Piko felt something calling him, something bigger than fear, bigger than comfort. The cold never bothered him. The wind didn't scare him. What frightened him was the idea of never discovering what lay beyond the endless white. And then, one extraordinary day, that chance arrived. A massive chunk of drifting ice broke away from the shore during a powerful ocean current. While the colony panicked and scrambled to safety, Piko stood still. His heart raced, not with fear, but with excitement. Before he could second-guess himself, the ice beneath his feet drifted away from the land he had always known. The waves carried him forward into the vast open sea. The journey was not easy. Towering waves crashed around him like moving mountains. Dark storm clouds rolled overhead, and thunder echoed across the ocean. Piko clung tightly to the ice, his tiny orange feet gripping the slippery surface as freezing water splashed against his feathers. For the first time in his life, he felt small against the power of nature. But even as fear trembled inside him, there was something stronger: hope. Days passed. The icy wind slowly softened. The air changed. It grew warmer. The harsh white world behind him faded into a distant memory, replaced by deep blue waters glowing under golden sunlight. And then he saw it. Land. But not icy cliffs or snow-covered shores. This land shimmered gold beneath a blazing sun. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze. Waves crashed rhythmically against warm sand. Piko blinked in disbelief as his tiny orange feet touched something he had never felt before: soft, warm grains of sand. The air smelled different. It felt alive. He waddled forward carefully, flippers stretched for balance, his bright blue eyes wide with wonder. "Where am I?" he whispered. Suddenly, a tiny voice shouted from below, "Hey, watch it, big guy!" Piko froze and looked down. There, standing boldly on the sand, was a tiny brown ant. He had 3 small body segments, thin, twitching antennae, round, expressive eyes, and the most determined little smile Piko had ever seen. "Name's Andy," the ant said confidently, "and you're stepping on my neighborhood." Piko blinked. He had never seen a creature so small speak with such courage. "I'm Piko," he replied gently, lowering himself to get a better look. Despite their enormous size difference, something unexpected happened in that moment. They both smiled. At first glance, they were complete opposites. Piko thrived in freezing temperatures. Andy lived under the blazing sun. Piko swam through icy oceans. Andy marched across scorching sand dunes. One was large and fluffy. The other was tiny and tough. But as they talked beneath the warm sky, sharing stories of snowstorms and sand tunnels, ocean waves and underground colonies, they realized something important. They both carried the same spark inside: curiosity, courage, a desire for adventure. Their friendship formed faster than either of them expected. Andy gave Pico a tour of the beach, introducing him to seashells that shimmered like treasure, tide pools filled with darting fish, and sand dunes shaped by the wind. Pico shared stories of glowing auroras and ice caves sparkling like crystal palaces. They laughed together, they explored together, and for the first time in their lives, both felt understood. But their bond was soon tested. One afternoon, as Andy showed Pico the entrance to his underground ant colony, a dark shadow swept across the sand. A loud screech pierced the air. Seagulls. Hungry seagulls circled above, their sharp eyes locked onto the tiny ants below. Panic spread through the colony. Andy's antennae stiffened, but he didn't run. Instead, he stood firm. "We protect each other," he said bravely. Without hesitation, Pico stepped forward. He spread his flippers wide and let out the loudest squawk he could muster. The sound echoed across the shoreline. Sand swirled around him as he stood tall, shielding Andy and the colony beneath his body. The seagulls hesitated. They had never seen a penguin on this beach before, especially so bold. After a tense moment that felt like forever, the birds flapped away. Silence returned. Andy looked up at Pico with admiration. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Pico replied softly. "That's what friends do." Days turned into weeks. As temperatures soared, Pico struggled in the heat. His feathers felt heavy, and he missed the cool Antarctic wind. But Andy and his colony refused to let him suffer. Working together, hundreds of tiny ants dug a shaded tunnel beneath the sand, just big enough for Pico to rest comfortably. It was cool, protected, and safe. Pico felt something he had never fully understood before. Not just adventure, not just bravery, but gratitude. Together, they faced many more challenges. Rising tides threatened to flood the ant tunnels, so Pico used his flippers to redirect small streams of water. Curious crabs tried invading the colony, but Andy's quick thinking and Pico's size scared them away. Each obstacle strengthened their bond. Each victory reminded them that strength isn't measured by size. But seasons change, and one evening as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Pico felt the ocean currents shift. The water called him again. It was time to return home. The thought of leaving broke his heart. Andy stood on a small sand mound trying to be brave. "You'll come back, right?" Pico lowered his head gently. "No matter how far the ice is from the sand, you'll always be my best friend." The next morning, as waves rolled in gently, Pico stepped into the ocean. Andy watched from the shore, antennae lifted high. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The journey back was calmer, but Pico was different now. When he finally returned to Antarctica, the snow no longer felt lonely. The cold no longer felt endless. He carried warmth inside his heart, the warmth of friendship. When a fierce blizzard later struck the colony, Pico remembered Andy's courage. Instead of hiding, he stood tall and guided younger penguins to safety. When storms felt overwhelming, he remembered how a tiny ant once stood against seagulls without fear. Meanwhile, far away under the golden sun, Andy had changed too. When construction machines threatened the beach, Andy organized his colony with fearless leadership. "If my best friend can cross an ocean," he said boldly, "we can move mountains of sand." And so, across continents, across climates, across impossible distances, two unlikely friends carried each other's strength in their hearts. Because true friendship isn't about size. It isn't about where you come from. It isn't about how different you appear. It's about standing together when shadows fall. It's about believing in someone when the world doubts them. It's about discovering that sometimes the person who changes your life forever is the one you never expected. From the coldest ice to the warmest sand, from roaring oceans to quiet tunnels beneath the earth, Pico and Andy's story became more than an adventure. It became a reminder that courage can come in the smallest form, that kindness can travel across oceans, and that sometimes the most powerful heroes are the tiniest ones standing beside us. And somewhere, beneath dancing northern lights and glowing sunset skies, a penguin and an ant both look toward the horizon, smiling, knowing that distance could never break the bond they built. Because real friendship doesn't melt in the heat, and it doesn't freeze in the cold. It lasts forever.